We believe in a God who delights to speak. The Bible is full of stories about God communicating with people in so many different ways. Jesus told his disciples in John chapter 10, verse 27, "My sheep listen to my voice, I know them, and they follow me." Hearing God's voice isn't reserved for prophets or missionaries or just the heroes of the Bible. According to Jesus, it's for every believer. He expects his sheep to hear him. The reality is sometimes we struggle with this. God may be speaking, but we don't recognize it. Sometimes it's because we don't expect him to speak. Other times we're not familiar with the ways he communicates. And honestly, sometimes we just doubt our ability to hear him. But here's the good news. Learning to recognize God's voice is a skill. It's something we can grow in. Take Samuel, for example. In 1 Samuel chapter 3, we read that even though he would later become a prophet, Samuel didn't recognize God's voice at first. He had to be taught. If Samuel needed to grow in hearing God, then it makes sense that you and I will too. Pete Greig, one of the founders of the 24/7 prayer movement, once said, "Learning to hear God's voice, his word, and his whisper is the single most important thing you will ever learn to do." Hearing God's voice is essential for following Jesus. It's expected, and it changes everything about our walk with him. Sometimes we imagine hearing God must be an audible voice, but more often it's a sense or impression, an inner knowing. The Bible shows us God speaking in all kinds of ways. Think about Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, God told him directly to go to a land he would show him. Later in Genesis chapter 15, God gave Abraham a vision and used the stars as an illustration of his promise. Then in Genesis chapter 18, God sent 3 visitors to repeat that promise, one person, many different ways. Or consider how God spoke to Adam in the garden in Genesis chapter 3. Or to Joseph and Mary through dreams and angelic messages in Matthew and Luke. He even spoke through a donkey in Numbers chapter 22. God is endlessly creative. And he still speaks today. Sometimes it's through scripture, when a verse comes alive for our situation. Sometimes it's through thoughts and impressions. Sometimes through a dream, a picture, or even a song at the right moment. He might use another believer to confirm something or even our circumstances. He often gives us a sense of peace or unease to guide us. The point is, there is no formula. He speaks in many ways. The Apostle Paul prayed in Ephesians chapter 1 that the eyes of our hearts would be enlightened, that we might know God better. That's often what hearing him is like. It's not with our ears, but with the eyes and ears of our hearts. Jesus said in John chapter 14 that the Spirit of truth would live within us. It makes sense then that his voice often comes from within, speaking into our thoughts and imagination. Maybe you're wondering, how do I know if what I'm sensing is from God or just my own thoughts or even something negative? The Bible tells us to test what we hear. Ask, does this line up with God's character? Is it consistent with his love, his peace, his truth? Does it match Scripture? God will never contradict his word. And does it resonate with trusted believers? If the answer is yes, there's a good chance you're hearing God's voice. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3, God says, "Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." What an invitation. God is ready to speak, but he waits for us to invite him. Think again of Samuel. God called him multiple times. But the real conversation didn't begin until Samuel responded, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 says, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me." Jesus wasn't talking to unbelievers there. He was speaking to his followers. He was saying he longs for deeper relationship, for us to open the door of our hearts and listen. One way to practice this is to imagine a meeting place with Jesus. Ask him, "Where would you like to meet me?" Maybe it's a place you know well, a peaceful spot in nature, or even the green pastures and still waters of Psalm 23. Let him use your imagination to show you more of his heart. In that place, ask him questions. Listen for his answers. Sometimes you'll sense his presence clearly. Other times it may feel quiet. But keep practicing. This is how relationship grows. The key is not to overcomplicate it. Hearing God isn't about striving. It's about relationship. You can invite him to speak while you're reading scripture, while taking a walk, or even in a quiet moment with a cup of coffee. Jesus has promised that his sheep will hear his voice. That includes you. It might feel awkward at first, but the more you lean in and listen, the clearer his voice will become. And it's worth it because hearing God changes everything.